break on Wednesday, partly to mostly sunny with a high about 55, lighter winds expected. It looks like maybe some frost Wednesday night at the Thursday morning, and most of Thursday mostly sunny in the low 60s. Jonesboro, that's your KLEK 102.5 FM weather.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Wall Street tumbles as fears grow of a trade war between China and the US. Myanmar has agreed to a visit by the UN Security Council, and crowds of mourners and political figures have flocked to the home of South African anti-apartheid campaigner and former First Lady, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, who's died at the age of 81.
It's 9:01.
KLEK LP Jonesboro, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council. It's now time for Community Conversations, a program focusing on the people working to make the Jonesboro community a better place, while offering viewpoints from all sides of the issues. The views expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of KLEK 102.5 FM, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, or our underwriters or sponsors.
All right, good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday to you. You're tuned in to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. I'm your host, and my special guest is actually on the phone. His name is Tristan Wilkerson from Philander Smith College. So I'm going to give a brief introduction of Mr. Tristan before I bring him on the line. Tristan is a domestic policy professional and political strategist. His background is rooted in advocacy, political training and education, electoral organizing, and public policy. He is presently serving as interim executive director of the Social Justice Institute at Philander Smith College. Tristan is co-founder and managing partner of Think Rubik's LLC, a thought leadership firm for creative policymaking and political strategies. He was formerly senior policy advisor to PICO National Network, the nation's largest faith-based organizing network, and I'm sorry, it might be PICO, he can correct me in a moment, representing more than 2 million families, where he advised the network's urban strategies, state and federal affairs, advancing a portfolio that included urban gun violence prevention and criminal justice reform. Prior to PICO National Network, Tristan worked as a policy advocate for millennials at Young Invincibles, a leading nonprofit voice for progressive policies on healthcare and higher education impacting Americans ages 18 to 35. A former Hill staffer and aide to Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, Tristan organized members of Congress in developing the first ever congressional caucus on boys and men of color. Tristan is a Wellstone trained organizer, and an active alumnus of New Leaders Council Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and is the youngest mayoral appointee to the District of Columbia Commission on Fathers, Men, and Boys. His work has been captured by CNN, MSNBC, C-SPAN, Ebony Magazine, The Root, The Washington Post, The Washington Times, The Washington Business Journal, The Commercial Appeal, Empower Magazine, and Al Jazeera America. Tristan is a native of Little Rock, Arkansas, and now lives in bustling New England, D.C. He enjoys art, live music, good times with friends, and anticipating former Obama White House photographer and professional shade thrower Pete Sousa's daily Instagram posts. Well, wow, Tristan, you have a well-rounded, busy life.
I guess so. When you put it that way, it seems really kind of interesting, huh?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
All right, so let's get into our topic of the day. We're going to be talking about a recent summit that took place. Well, I say summit, conference, or please help me with the wording on that.
Yeah, summit's right. It was a much more intimate affair than a typical conference. We had about 100 attendees, so it was really good information sharing, kind of learning experience. And the first of many to come. So.
Okay. Well, I want to give an introduction. This is The title is called Philander Smith Tackles Law and Justice. Mass incarceration, the systematic and prolific practice of imprisoning a population, continues to run rampant in the state. The incarceration rate in Arkansas increased 17% from 2008 through 2013, according to the Sentencing Project. In 2015 alone, around one-third of parole and probation violators were imprisoned on mere technicalities, costing Arkansas taxpayers $20 million annually. We're here again with Tristan Wilkerson, interim director of the Social Justice Institute at Philander Smith College, to unpack this issue and discuss how we can turn around this mass incarceration epidemic. I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied this morning. All right, so let's get more in details about the event. What were some of the key topics at the summit concerning mass incarceration?
That's a good question. So, the Law and Justice Summit, which we intend to do again, perhaps in the fall or spring, covering other issues, there's so many to discuss. This particular summit focused on an issue that we thought was really keenly unique to Arkansas, given just the practice of corrections in the state. And so what we did was invite thought leaders, advocates, legal minds from all over the state that could come in and be able to share their experiences and their work with the public, the general public. So I think what we ended up with was a really dynamic event where folks could just sort of dig in, understand, what mass incarceration is and what it looks like, particularly in Arkansas. And some of the key takeaways, I think, for folks were, number one, directly impacted people are uniquely positioned to advance the cause of justice, if you will, on the issue. Just think about it; they are perhaps the foremost experts on the issue based on their experience alone. We learned from sharp legal minds like Amar Shakur, Michael Kaiser, just the real challenges facing the public in the courtroom, and how the courts are sort of strapped, or let's say that their hands are tied because of some of the laws that have been passed. And in fact, one of the things I think we'll discuss today is just how we end up with so many folks in jails and prisons. Well, there's cash bail is an issue all across the country, but in Arkansas, there are rules that allow for arresting and recidivism and reincarceration on technical violations of probation and parole. Significant issue in the state of Arkansas. We had a chance to really understand why that is and what was causing that. Non-violent offenses treated as felonies, and of course, having the potential to change lives of our youth who are really grossly affected by some of our corrections policies. We also had a chance to talk to advocates about what folks are doing about the issue and how people can get engaged and involved. And so we tried to cover as much as we could, the entire inside and out, and as much as you can do in 5 hours of a day.
Okay.
Of the issue. And so that was in a nutshell and some of the key takeaways, and really excited to have made that happen, and looking forward to the opportunity to do it again.
Okay, so I want to ask a question, bringing it to Arkansas, but also comparing to other states. How does Arkansas compare to other states in the nation in terms of incarcerations and criminal justice?
So one of the best sources I have for folks, that I share with folks who want to learn about Arkansas as the state compares to other states, are these really wonderful organizations that do the research but make the information real plain. That's the I'm getting tongue-tied here. The Sentencing Project, and then prisonpolicy.org. And so when we look at some of the research, and frankly, when we look at the raw stats, it's telling because you'd expect Arkansas with a smaller population of people across the entire union to, not necessarily be in the top 10% of states incarcerating a majority of their population. Well, in fact, we are. We're right up there with Oklahoma, Texas, and frankly other states in the South who are just do a really good job of incarcerating people, and perhaps not the best job, if I could be critical, of rehabilitating folks. And a lot of it is, again, it's really because it's big business, and so it's not just the arresting and the really poor laws that just cause such detriment in the courtroom for particularly young people, but people of color and folks who are affected by the justice system. But it's the release and the recidivism and the parole and the probation that also drive incarceration rates. And I mentioned cash bail as well. And folks are oftentimes held in jails for up to a year or longer, just waiting for their day in court because they can't afford bail. This is another, again, factor that contributes to the ballooning incarceration rates that have occurred in the last really 40 years. But you asked about how we stand up to other states, and frankly, 2013 was telling because Arkansas, with again a small population of folks and even smaller population of folks of color, managed to lead the nation in incarceration rate, where we saw a 17% increase in incarceration in 2013 and 2014. And we've seen a pretty consistent growth, not growing as fast, but still growth, which has us in the top 10% of all states in terms of our rate of incarceration. And so, as you can imagine, we don't have the largest population in the union. A lot of our citizens are poor, low income, and frankly, we're incarcerating more of the black folks that live in Arkansas than we are their white counterparts. And you can only imagine what that's doing to a state with an already smaller population of people of color. And so when you ask how do we measure up to other states, well, frankly, we're measuring up better than we should, especially when you look at our population and you look at the income levels and education of folks who live in the state of Arkansas.
All right, so your last comment, next to last comment leads us into my next question. Because so many people that are already at a disadvantage are being incarcerated, what is the long-term effect on those vulnerable communities and those individuals that are being incarcerated?
So that's actually, I think, a fantastic question. I'm so glad you asked. Part of what we tried to drive during our panel conversation at the summit was just that, was how are communities affected by incarceration. So let me just sort of frame my response, if you will, with some quick statistics.
Okay.
So, 1984-2004, we saw incarceration rate across the nation balloon more than 400%. More than 400% to the point where we were incarcerating more than 2 million people. Now, granted, it may not seem like an incredibly large number, but we incarcerate more of our people than any other nation in the world. Right? We have about 4% of the world's people and about 25% of the world's incarcerated people, leading even North Korea.
Wow.
Okay, right. Now we should ask ourselves, all right, how did that happen? Two answers. One, war on drugs, which has admittedly, and we've learned this in the last 5 years, been a targeted war, if you will, on people of color, low-income folks. and it has been successful, unfortunately. And so that was post-Ronald Reagan. And then again, we saw the sharpest increase between about 1993 and 97 during the Clinton administration after the passing of the omnibus criminal law bill that decimated communities in response, of course, to gang violence and types of other violence and drug policies. It just was so errant when we look back on it. And so 1993, 1997, we saw the sharpest increase of this entire 40-year period. Now, 20 years later, we're seeing another sharp increase. So, because policies haven't changed much, right, from the early 90s with the crime bill. So, we're now seeing two generations of folks talking sons and fathers, mothers and daughters, affected by these really errant policies. And so, as we look around and we try to make sense of conditions of our most vulnerable and distressed communities, white low income, women and children without men in the home because of the threat of incarceration, and of course the reality that so many of our young men are incarcerated. In Arkansas, young black men are 400% more likely to go to jail than their white counterparts. What that do to a home and a family, we can all sort of understand just how detrimental that is. And so when we ask ourselves, all right, what does this look like in real life, and we pause to just look at black family, look at white low-income families, look at brown families, we can see the immediate impact, right? We see it in our education system. When African-American boys particularly are, by the third grade, if they're not succeeding, almost guaranteed to be to have an interaction with the justice system, excuse me. And so and then it becomes cyclical, frankly, and it becomes a quite vicious cycle, affecting folks' ability to earn wealth, to build wealth. It's not just a job. We're talking about actually building wealth. And wealth is a different conversation because therein lies legacy. And so, as I initially framed, you're talking about generations after generations still affected by policy decisions that were made 20 years ago. This is what it looks like. And then that shows up in our communities when you don't have enough folks in some areas earning enough to take care, to lift up and take care of communities. And so then the threat of gentrification becomes beyond real. Policies around with weak social safety nets. People slip through the cracks, and poverty becomes not the only issue, but homelessness as well, where we start to see more women and children in shelters and out on the streets, which is a growing concern and growing issue. And so there is no shortage of ways that these policies have, frankly, just wreaked havoc and decimated populations and lots of our most vulnerable communities. And frankly, those communities are blacker than most folks want to admit. And we have to be honest about that. So that racial analysis is critical. And it must be something we discuss when we're trying to deal with the issue. And the last thing I'll say is that this was by design, if I can be frank. We have witnessed a response to opioid addiction, which is affecting, if you will, white folks. This is part of the racial analysis. Affecting white folks perhaps more so than any other population group. And there's been a different approach to opioid addiction, right? So the public health approach to opioid addiction, public safety approach to opioid addiction, I mean, this new imagination around health and just communities and money that's coming out all out of the all out of the sorts to deal with it was not done with crack cocaine. It has not been done around gun violence. So when we deal with issues that affect our distressed and vulnerable communities with criminalization, and it's adversely penalizing folks, then we can imagine the outcome of that sort of treatment from a policy standpoint is going to not just wreak havoc, but in some ways eliminate entire families, eliminate entire blocks of people and communities of people. And that's exactly what's happened. And so we know what we have to do. Why hasn't it been done? That's another question that frankly needs a bit of a come to Jesus moment, if you will, with our policymakers and community at large.
Well, you have really touched on a lot of topics that I'm sure are very hot button and uncomfortable for some people to discuss, but unfortunately they are necessary in this day and time. We cannot continue to go in the direction we're going and losing valuable people. Yes, I do feel that if someone commits a crime, they pay the time. However, they should not have to pay for the rest of their life. But we're going to have to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will finish up our conversation about, what are some things that can be done policy-wise? What are some things people can do to be more of an advocate for change? So please don't go anywhere. You're tuned in to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
You're listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We'll be right back.
What one thing can you do to make your marriage better? I'm Mark Merrill with today's Family Minute. Laugh together. It's no joke. Laughter not only makes us feel good, but according to research cited in the Canadian Family Physician Journal, it releases chemicals associated with bonding. A hearty belly laugh increases oxygen into your bloodstream and gives your heart a workout. That releases even more feel-good endorphins. Humor helps us cope with stress. It relieves tension and creates a feeling of intimacy, empathy, and understanding. Learning to laugh together will make your marriage better. So share funny stories with each other, invite laughter and play into your marriage every day. Go ahead, have a good laugh, and remember, your family first.
Want to connect with Mark on Twitter? You can. Follow him at twitter.com/Mark Merrill.
Family Minute is made possible by the Kappa Nu Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a non-profit organization committed to service to all mankind. Kappa Nu Omega Alpha Kappa Alpha on Facebook and KNOMEGA1908.com.
Now it's even easier than ever to support KLEK 102.5 FM. If you love what we do and want to support us, you can now donate by simply sending a text message. That's right. All you have to do is text the keyword GIVE to KLEK to 844-544-7171. Once again, text the keyword GIVE to KLEK to 844-544-7171 to make your donation. And don't worry how to spell it. Either way you spell it, whether using the number 2, letter T-O, or T-O-O. If you text GIVE to KLEK to 844-544-7171, you will be able to make your tax-deductible donation. We're your community radio station where it's all about your life, your music. Don't forget, text GIVE to KLEK to 844-544-7171.
Full Sun Gifts, celebrating their 1-year anniversary throughout April, is a supporter of KLEK. Full Sun Gifts is located at 606 Southwest Drive in Jonesboro and offers a variety of gift items for all occasions. Full Sun will host the Scout Bag Trunk Show April 12th and 13th and the Alley and Bird Jewelry Trunk Show April 20th. More information is available at Full Sun Gifts on Facebook and Instagram and 870-974-8480.
The Mu Omicron Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated was established on January 1st, 1977, originally serving Blytheville, Arkansas, and now serving Jonesboro, Blytheville, Osceola, Marion, and West Memphis, Arkansas. Today, the chapter continues to make an impact by focusing on Alpha's national community outreach initiatives such as My Brother's Keeper, A Voteless People is a Hopeless People, Go to High School, Go to College, Project Alpha, Boy Scouts, and the March of Dimes. The Mu Omicron Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is committed to Alpha's mission of developing leaders, promoting brotherhood and academic excellence, while providing service and advocacy to the community. More information about the Mu Omicron Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is available at MOL Alphas on Facebook or via email at molalphas@gmail.com.
Hello, I'm Officer Victoria Evans. I have always had a desire to help others in need and to be an example and role model to young women by encouraging them to never give up on their dreams. My dream was to become a police officer and to serve my community. In 2016, that dream became a reality, and it is the most rewarding experience of my life. Now I want to let you know about the same opportunity. The Jonesboro Police Department will conduct testing every month for patrol officers. Applications are available online at jonesboropolice.com or at the Police Department, 1001 South Caraway Road. The Jonesboro Police Department offers a competitive salary, health, and retirement benefits, top-of-the-line training, and most importantly, the chance to make a difference in the Jonesboro community. Join me in making Jonesboro a better place. The Jonesboro Police Department is an equal opportunity employer, and women and minorities are especially encouraged to apply. More information is available at 870-935-5657.
Hello, my name is Quabila. I am over 40 and trying to live my best life possible, but I have secondary lymphedema. It has truly altered my life. The most frustrating part of this is that it went undiagnosed and improperly treated. After enduring several surgeries, I was told in a nonchalant way that maybe losing weight will help. I urge you to listen to your body, do your research, and talk to your doctor. Don't waste time on getting the help you need now.
At 33, a wife of 17 years and 3 children, my name is Kara Maxwell. I was diagnosed with lymphedema after the treatment of breast cancer. Learning about the lymphedema diagnosis is on the rise in the medical community, although there is the least interest of research. Learning I had lymphedema inspired me to become an advocate. Be aware.
And now back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
All right, welcome back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. I'm your host, Quabila Jones, and on the phone with me is Mr. Tristan Wilkerson from Philander Smith College. For those of you who missed the first part of our show, we've had a very lively conversation concerning mass incarceration, and more specifically in Arkansas in comparison to other states around the nation. So if you have any questions or comments, we would love for you to drop them in our Facebook live stream. I want to say thank you for watching to Dr. Sharice Jones Branch, Lachey Robinson, and Helen and Ambika Williams for checking in. And thank you to everyone that is checking in that I can't see. So I hope that you are enjoying this conversation. I hope you take something valuable away from the conversation, and hopefully it inspires you to start being an advocate for change when it comes to incarceration. Let's try to keep our families together and see what we can do to help make it better. So without further ado, I'm going to let Mr. Tristan get back into our conversation. We ended up talking about how mass incarceration, on just technicalities, how people suffer for little things. Yes, they committed a crime. Yes, they should do the time. However, if they've served their time, let them be, and not try to hold their feet to the fire for the rest of their life. This creates big problems within the family. I want you to please get into, you talked about some of the mental, emotional effects. Let's get into the long-term physical health effects some people may not realize exist. Tristan?
Yes.
Okay.
Long-term physical health?
Yes.
Well, let me, I appreciate that question as well. The fact of the matter is, you mentioned, folks who, do the crime, do the time. Well, what drives the crime is one of the questions we ask, right? What exactly causes an individual demonstrate either violence or other felonious criminal acts. And oftentimes it's caused by trauma. It's caused by a myriad of things that, frankly, are outside of folks' control: drug addiction and abuse. And like I mentioned, there's no shortage of ways or things that folks are affected by that perpetrate or cause or provoke violent acts or felonious acts. But so that is part of the public health conversation that we have to have.
Okay.
So that we can do healing on the front end and maybe be much more preventative versus reactionary, which is harshly, which frankly just works more harshly by penalizing folks. And we're pretty good at punishment. We're not so good at rehabilitation, and we're even worse at prevention. That's just the truth. So we need to invest more on the front end to prevent these things from happening. But the long-term effects of incarceration, there are prisons that do a decent job of correcting behavior and allowing incarcerated individuals to come out with a renewed sense of citizenship, and they do end up leading very productive lives, and we should celebrate them and embrace them. But so yes, right. But at the same time, we can't abandon those who still struggle, right?
Yes.
Because of jails and prisons that don't necessarily do a good job of correct behavior and rehabilitation. So long-term effects are either psychological. Trauma has its own impact. It's been linked to PTSD-like conditions. Our prisons overall and nationwide don't actually even meet international standards. And it's because things like solitary confinement are not, there's no oversight, right? So you could have juveniles who are locked up and end up spending a disproportionate amount of time in solitary confinement, which, if you can imagine, for a young man or woman, black, white, or otherwise, in solitary confinement in a prison for adults, what that could do to that individual is devastating, potentially. And so, you asked about the long-term effects. We're almost setting ourselves up and making the job a lot harder to meet folks where they are, really do the good work, hard work of rehabilitation and correcting, and preparing folks for reintegration into civil society. So, the long-term effects are deep and wide and far-reaching, but there are really good practices that do exist, in some private, but not so much because there lacks oversight. Private prisons in a lot of ways, but in our state-controlled prisons, there are some places that do it better than others, and we've got to take those best practices and implement them, especially in areas where we're not doing so well.
Okay. All right. So I didn't want to come across as insensitive, and I should know better. I learned in one of my classes that there are many factors that lend itself to individuals committing crimes. And one thing I've noticed in the area where I live, there are many factors, but one thing is sparse resources. When the resources are not available, people will do what they have to do to get what they need. And sometimes it may be someone who's never ever gotten in trouble ever before, but that one time they did something wrong, they got in trouble, and it led them down a path that they never saw themselves going. And so here they are now in a cycle that seems never ending, and impossible to get out of. One thing I wanted to throw into the mix of the conversation is, while individuals are being incarcerated at higher rates, do you feel that maybe a lack of, say, public defenders or lawyers, individuals actually working for these people to get to the bottom of the case and provide the best case possible for them, while when they go to court and things of that nature, do you feel that there's a lack in that area?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, you could talk to any directly impacted person or formerly incarcerated individual who would likely attest that their experience inside the courtroom maybe felt unfair for them because they lacked adequate defense and a strong attorney. Our public defender offices across the country, including the state of Arkansas, are grossly underfunded. There's always a need, seems like, for really good lawyers to be able to protect and defend individuals particularly individuals who have their first encounter with the justice system, which is, you mentioned long-term effects. That if you've had a troubled life or a difficult time, school wasn't the easiest for you, and now you're having your first encounter with the justice system, it can be a traumatic experience that can shape your life for years to come, and it may take even longer to overcome that. And so part of that process is absolutely defense, and as much as we spend in arresting individuals who are on probation or parole for technical violations. In the last year, the state of Arkansas spent, I think their number was $20 million annually for just a small segment of the population of folks who are incarcerated. We spent a fraction of that hiring good attorneys to serve as public defenders, and you need a good number of them, because with the pipeline of folks coming through court, there's a need to make sure the caseload isn't, just so heavy on some individuals. You've got to staff up, frankly, the public defender's office, so that you can have some sense of fairness if we're gonna, have a big business, so to speak, and so many folks coming through the court system. So that is a concern, but I'd like to just point out that that's not sort of the only issue. I think there's twofold. There are two ways we should sort of look at this prevention element. It is how do we thwart, how do we change, rather, policies that are heavy-handed on petty crime, so to speak, like nonviolent crime, perpetrated particularly by young people who, are being young people in a lot of ways. Like, what do we need to do to strengthen policy so that we take a healing and rehabilitation approach early on, second chances, if you will, juvenile courts, things of that nature, which also take considerable investment, but the money's there, right? If we think differently about how we are dealing with corrections, we can appropriate dollars to make sure we fund those initiatives. The other thing is frankly how the system affects those who do commit crimes and are in dire need, desperate need of corrections and rehabilitation. And so those are the kind of, I think, the two things I just want to highlight, because those are the areas that we find ourselves weakest. For an African American kid, and I have to be frank, because African American young men and women are so grossly affected by this than others. We have to just understand, these matters in that frame. Their first time interaction with the court system generally leads to sentencing of disproportionate outcomes, meaning, their first encounter likely leads to jail time, and in some cases, mandatory minimums, which were, such a popular, unfortunately popular policy prior to the Obama administration, and in some ways sort of rearing its head again. And it does such disservice to young people who are having their first encounter, particularly for nonviolent offenses. I'm not talking about folks who are committing murders. I'm talking about young people who perhaps out of desperation or other reasons unexplained, perpetrating crimes, either drug offenses or what have you, and then leading to life-altering consequences without intervention. And that is not necessarily the healthiest way to approach things. And because we know there's plenty of money wrapped up in the justice system for us to deal with things differently, we just have to find the courage, and frankly, the public has the will for us to deal with these things differently.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question from Facebook. It says, what would you say to those who would say, well, they shouldn't commit the crime if they can't do the time? I mean, they shouldn't commit the crime. Can't they? Oh, a minute. Okay. I think that's how the question is supposed to be asked. If they can't do the time, then they shouldn't commit the crime. What do you, for people who have that comeback, what do you say to them?
I mean, let me try to be as thoughtful as possible, and also optimistic. I am not of the thought that people want to commit crime, right? Do people commit crime? Absolutely, right? And there are oftentimes real reasons that lead to folks to commit crime. Now, we haven't talked about mental health, and that is a huge element of this conversation. Again, how we deal with folks who struggle with interactions in the justice system is what we're dealing with today, right? So mental health has to be part of that conversation. But by and large, when we criminalize people, even before an offense, we've almost conditioned that individual to commit crime. And that is the type of policy change we have to see different. So when African Americans have an interaction with police, it's not generally the most positive. We know that there's deep-seated mistrust, distrust of police among African Americans differently from wealthy white individuals, and that leads to sort of really poor interactions, and criminal acts, things of that nature. The conditions that people live in are a huge factor. So if you're living in poverty, you don't know where the next meal is coming from. You don't have money to put into the gas tank. Now, having difficulty feeding the kids, difficulty finding a job. You weren't exactly successful like we want most of our children to be coming out of high school and junior high school, heading into college. Like, these folks we have to see, these populations of people at risk. And I know I'm talking a lot about African American folks because they're disproportionately affected, but this also includes white men in general and white women who are low income, affected really, disproportionately. And so, as we think about how the justice system should work, yes, folks who commit crime should be dealt with appropriately and fairly with the justice system. But the problem is it's not happening fairly, and we're not doing enough on the front end to prevent such a deep pipeline of folks coming in and out of the justice system. We have to be honest with ourselves about how we got here so that we can do the right thing about how we fix it. Right? If we're not serious about building community, then we're going to continue to see our incarceration rates drive. We're going to have to build new prisons to hold folks, and that does not help build community. What we have to do is understand the issue as it is, not just folks who commit crime. It's folks who are conditioned to commit crime, folks who are not given the best opportunities to make a life for themselves. We don't do enough, invest enough, I think, in secondary education, making a non-college alternatives a real option, creating a real pipeline to jobs that not just a job, but a job that pays. I mean, too many people are working poor, particularly in states like Arkansas, right? Minimum wage is, not sufficient to sustain families, particularly families with kids. So as we understand these things, poverty in particular, we can, and mental health, of course, as well, then I think we can understand and have a little bit of compassion so that we can make the investments we need on the front end to thwart as much crime as possible, particularly nonviolent crimes, which, again, we deal with nonviolent crime really, really harshly. And if we invested more on the front end, perhaps we wouldn't have as much nonviolent crime occurring, you know. And I have an anecdotal way of helping my students understand this. I'll reserve that for your show and your listening. But I do agree with your Facebook user. You know, folks who commit crimes should have an interaction with the justice system, but the interaction needs to be fair. Otherwise, it's really hard to have faith in what we call our justice system. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, sir. And we also have another Facebook comment, or question rather. Do you think laws are used as a weapon? You have a minute and 30 seconds to answer this question.
That's a fireside chat question. I will say that, as I said earlier, when laws are made, generally speaking, we should trust that there's sufficient dialogue to meet understanding about what the outcome of that law would be. All right. Now, sometimes laws are passed and folks don't. Folks vote on bills and they don't read the bill. Right. We know that has happened. But I'm of the thought that the majority of folks who are elected to represent us are smart people, and do know the outcome of what some of these laws are, and so in that way, sure, one could argue that the laws are sort of weaponized. And when you think about how we have empowered the police state, how we've empowered inequity in policies, I mean, we've empowered the unfairness side of what's happening in the justice system we have. In that frame, absolutely one could say these laws are used as a weapon because of what they allow. I think, though, we shouldn't lose optimism because, this is a democratic nation. As much as we can be critical of our government and our and the laws that we live by, there are behaviors that we're allowed in this country that in other countries are not. Freedom of speech, actions, and things of that nature that allow us the ability to change things that we feel are unfair. And so, to that end, I'm not going to lead with the belief that all laws are used as weapons, but some perhaps are, because of the potential that we have inherently to do something about it. So I hope I'm not too deep into that minute.
No, we're going to take another quick break. All right, so thank you all for those questions. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up our discussion. And the final question is going to be, so how do we make a change? What are some of the forward-thinking philosophies on how to reform those who are in the criminal justice system? Stay tuned.
You're listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We'll be right back.
We're back with Money Matters. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. It may be time to shut down the Bank of YOU. Here's how to stop being a human ATM. First, never lend money you can't afford to give away. When anyone asks to borrow money from you, always ask yourself, what would happen if they don't pay you back? If you do lend, only lend from discretionary funds. That's whatever you have left over after you put money towards your savings, your debt, your emergency fund, and retirement, and you paid all of your bills and expenses. If there's no money left, that means no lending. If you really care about them, encourage independence. Don't enable dependency. Constantly bailing others out of financial jams doesn't really help them in the long run. If someone is always in financial trouble, the best you can do is direct them to online resources like blackenterprise.com or debtadvice.org to help them change their habits. Whatever you do, stop making their money problems your responsibility. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. for Money Matters, a product of American Urban Radio Networks.
Money Matters is made possible by the Jonesboro Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, a nonprofit organization dedicated to uncompromising commitment to communities, service, leadership, empowerment. www.jonesboroalumnidst.org.
Money Matters is brought to you by Bancorp South, offering checking, savings, loans,
credit cards, and wealth management. 5 locations in Jonesboro to serve you. www.bancorpsouth.com or 870-972-9800.
KLEK thanks CJ Pepper and the staff of Life Strategies Counseling Incorporated for helping people through hard times in life such as depression, family issues, stress, abuse, and more. They offer counseling and therapy for all ages, individuals, families, and groups. They are located at 1217 Stone Street. Phone number 1-866-972-1268 or online at lscihelp.com.
Stark's Auto Plaza at 2829 Red Wolf Boulevard is a proud KLEK supporter, offering luxury pre-owned vehicles sold wholesale to the public. At Stark's, we never say no. 870-203-9980. Details at starksautoplaza.com.
Tune in to Community Conversations every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. here on KLEK 102.5 FM. Join host Quabila Jones-Harden as she talks to people who are making a difference in the community and learn about the people and organizations that provide services to make Jonesboro a better place. Community Conversations every Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. on KLEK 102.5 FM. The McDaniel Law Firm, 400 South Main Street in Jonesboro, is a firm believer in justice and equality for the minority community. The McDaniel Law Firm has fought for our rights for over 44 years. The McDaniel Law Firm offers legal help for wrongful death as well as trucking and automobile accidents. Bobby and Brett McDaniel are available for a free consultation at 870-336-4747 or at www.mcdaniellawyers.com.
The Epic Center, located at 1899 Hasbrook Road, County Road 333, is Jonesboro's newest venue for entertainment for the entire family. They offer an auditorium with theater-style seating for up to 1,100 guests, a large stage, professional lighting and sound, dressing rooms, concessions, and more. Available for weddings, concerts, pageants, birthday parties, showers, and more. Booking and other information is available at Epic Center Jonesboro on Facebook, epiccenterjonesboro.com, and at 870-530-5841.
Hello, my name is Quabila. I am over 40 and trying to live my best life possible, but I have secondary lymphedema. It has truly altered my life. The most frustrating part of this is that it went undiagnosed and improperly treated. After enduring several surgeries, I was told in a nonchalant way that maybe losing weight will help. I urge you to listen to your body, do your research, and talk to your doctor. Don't waste time on getting the help you need now.
At 33, a wife of 17 years and 3 children, my name is Kara Maxwell. I was diagnosed with lymphedema after the treatment of breast cancer. Learning about the lymphedema diagnosis is on the rise in the medical community, although there is the least interest of research. Learning I had lymphedema inspired me to become an advocate. Be aware.
Check out the Dorinda Clark Cole radio show every Sunday at 4 o'clock p.m. Listen as Dorinda plays the very best in contemporary gospel music and interviews all of your favorite gospel artists. The Dorinda Clark Cole radio show every Sunday at 4 p.m. on KLEK 102.5 FM.
And now back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
All right, welcome back to our last segment of Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. I've been your host, Quabila Jones, and my very special guest on the phone, Mr. Tristan Wilkerson from Philander Smith College. So we've been having a very, very lively conversation, concerning mass incarceration in Arkansas and nationwide and how it affects individuals and families long term. All right, so this segment is like 5 or 7 minutes, so I'm going to let Mr. Wilkerson finish up and answer the question. Now that we know all this information, we know where some of the lack is, how can we help to make change? What can we do as individuals, as a community, to help foster change?
Yes, the $1 million question, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, maybe, perhaps this is the billion-dollar question, because we're talking, this is a billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar across the nation. So I'm actually really, really happy and wish we had more time to talk about how we all kind of can work together to create change. And let me lead by saying that we've talked a lot today about sort of the problems and what leads to it. And I've tried to remain optimistic as much as possible, because Social Justice Institute, we really want to be and have worked hard to position ourselves to convene folks who are not all like-minded, frankly, who have differences of opinion and thoughts, so that we can come together and understand where people are coming from, and we can practice. Part of our values are around strengthening communities and being, quite frankly, real unapologetic about equity and healing. And so I know folks, hear that word healing and may think, medicinal, going to see a doctor and getting healed, or even maybe spiritual and think faith. But healing is just another way of saying, being healthy, right? Okay. When we think about how we make our communities healthy, from that standpoint, that vantage point, we find a lot of all of our, not a lot, all of our solutions from that vantage point. We have to think from an asset-based perspective and not a debt-based perspective. Well, what does that mean? All right, well, an asset-based perspective says that, folks are committing, yes, there are folks committing crime, but what's causing folks to commit crime? What are the conditions that people live in that are promoting these really sort of gross interactions with the justice system? And what is the community doing or not doing, or could we be doing better, rather, to intervene and to create opportunities for more positive outcomes? Right, that's an asset-based perspective. So how do we do that? And I'm principled in this regard, is, we have to embrace those who have had a direct experience. So directly impacted people, formerly incarcerated individuals, are the best voices oftentimes, particularly those who have studied the matter, studied their own experience, and are doing work to reform the system based on their experience and others. Okay. You have to embrace them and their positions to understand, what success looks like. They're best suited to lead that type of reform. So that's number one. I'm principled in that regard, because we got to take that approach to a lot of our issues. Who's most impacted and what is it there versus someone else trying to fix problems for other people. All right. So there's that. The other thing. We have a minute and a half left. Okay, yeah, I'll be brief. The other thing is there's no shortage of folks in the space who are doing work to thwart recidivism, but also to engage on the front end. A lot of churches are involved in these things as well. One organization that comes to mind is Seeds of Liberation, which is run by Omar Shakur, who is just brilliant, one of my good friends, brilliant attorney, and then Morgan Leyenberger, who runs Compassion Works for All, doing really, really great work to engage folks on the front end. And I know people talk about, and the last thing I'll say is people talk about mentoring quite a bit. But we got to get a little bit better at not just mentoring, but actually sponsoring individuals and doing what we can to make homes healthy and whole, so that they can stand strong on their own. And that's a deeper conversation about economics and what folks are earning to be able to sustain their families. And so we can deal with that on another conversation. But those are just some of the things we can look at. Those two organizations are great opportunities for people to get involved that are looking for an opportunity to weigh in.
All right, well, thank you so much, Mr. Tristan. We definitely will have to give you a call back or have you call us back because I want to get into the conference coming up in June. I want to really get that information out to people, but today's been thank you for tuning to Community Conversations. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM, a program focusing on the people working to make the Jonesboro community a better place while offering viewpoints from all sides of the issues. The views expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of KLEK 102.5 FM, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, or our underwriters or sponsors.